Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
Question: which of these assets do savers have the most debt? A. Home. B. Car. C. Personal loan. D. A second home. Or E. None of the above. If you answered E. None of the above, guess what? You are correct.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the Worry-Free Retirement, with your host, retirement specialist and six-time author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
Last week on the Worry-Free Retirement, we discussed those times in retirement when having debt can be good and times when debt can be bad. In case you missed last week's episode on debt and its effect on something I refer to as retirement cash flow, no worries. You can watch all of our episodes by going to youtube.com and entering Tony Walker Financial. So back to this notion of debt and the different types of debt a saver may continue to carry in retirement. The answer to this question is E, none of the above. So what is the biggest debt of most savers in retirement? Can we get a drum roll, please? That's right, folks. The biggest debt of most savers in retirement is the 401k plan. And while most pundits and politicians refer to this debt as a tax, I like to think of it as a debt, essentially a lien that Uncle Sam has on your money, just like the lien the bank has on your house when you borrow against it. You see, with any debt comes the obligation to service that debt from cash flow, and while you don't actually pay the debt or the taxes buried inside your 401k from your current cash flow, instead your cash flow is lessened when you go to take money out of the 401k to satisfy the debt. So how does the debt on your 401k translate into less cash flow for you during retirement? Well, let me explain. Well, as we think about the increasing number of workers having to dip into their retirement savings at a time when some pundits think they should not, I'm often reminded that whether we dip into our 401ks and IRAs sooner or later, we will have to deal with the debt owed to Uncle Sam. Those taxes, if you will, that are for years have been postponed while we were working, but now that we are in retirement, those taxes or that debt comes due. Problem is, these taxes are unknown, having a huge rippling effect on cash flow, and for the most part, these taxes get passed off to our kids when we die. All the while, most of you think there is nothing you can do to reduce the size of what I call your tax tumor, and so what do? Well, most of you do nothing. And now that we have uncovered the biggest debt for most savers in retirement, the debt of all the taxes they will have to pay when they go dragging money out of these 401k plans, we must also remind you that with this debt comes the complexity of trying to understand the rippling effects of tax brackets, that's right, I said brackets, on distributions taken from your 401k and how much it will impact your retirement cash flow. So let's take a look at these three tax brackets that you're going to have to deal with. The first is, as we've talked most often about on this show, called the federal income tax bracket. And as we like to say with this tax bracket, like all tax brackets, it gets pretty bad, but basically the more you make, the more they take. In fact, when you put in federal and state tax brackets, this can be as high as 40% of everything that comes out of that tax-infested 401k or IRA. The second tax bracket most people don't think about at all is what I call the Social Security tax bracket. Now, what happens here is, in theory, Social Security should not be taxed, but when you lay on taxable income on top of that Social Security, as much as 85% of it has to be put on the tax return. Now, that doesn't mean you pay 85% in taxes, but again, for some people, that extra income that has to be taxed for Social Security can have a sure rippling effect on their cash flow. And finally, most people don't know about this. I call this the Medicare tax bracket, or what the politicians call the Income-Related Monthly Adjustment Amount, or IRMA for short, which essentially is an extra tax on Medicare Part B and Medicare Part D premiums. It's really a surcharge that will affect anyone making more and more money in retirement. And where does IRMA come into play in many of these cases? Well, that's right. When you try to take money out of the 401k to live on. Not only will you pay taxes on the money for the feds and also Social Security taxes, potentially you'll also have to deal with increased Medicare premiums, or what they call IRMA. So, what is the solution to enjoying more of your hard-earned savings? Well, first off, if you are years away from retirement, be sure that you do not put all of your money into pre-tax retirement accounts, but rather you need to balance out those monies and those contributions going into what we call either after-tax accounts, tax-deferred accounts, or tax-free accounts. This way, you balance out your cash flow in retirement and hopefully keep these rippling taxes of the three tax brackets more to a minimum. I mean, why would you defer taxes into the future knowing all the while you're going to have to pay this debt at some point, and you never know, the taxes could even be higher in the future. Second, you can get with someone like us at Tony Walker Financial and figure out how to balance the cash flow now as opposed to sitting around doing nothing in hopes that Uncle Sam will magically reduce the taxes you will owe in the future, which more than likely they're not going to do that. In other words, if taxes in the future go up, so will the debt owed on your pre-tax retirement accounts. It really is a lose-lose situation to sit there and do nothing. So how can you deal with this tax tumor? Well, first thing you can do is chip away at the debt Uncle Sam is wanting it repaid to. And the way we do that is we focus on a specific situation for our clients or prospective clients. In fact, we can create a plan that is tailored to your specific hopes, dreams, and of course, your wallet. And to get started finding out how we at Tony Walker Financial can help mitigate or reduce that tax tumor, we call it the free 10-minute fiduciary phone call, where you and I will talk for a few minutes by phone, and if it looks like we can be of help, that's right, you're going to meet with the owner of the company to discuss your situation. And not only are we just going to discuss it, we're going to lay out a free proprietary game plan, something no other advisory firm has. This game plan is going to help you understand not only cash flow, but how we might reduce those taxes. So take advantage of this free phone call. Just log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com, or give us a call anytime at 877-499-9255. I'm Tony Walker. You stay tuned. We'll be right back. Have you recently retired, been laid off, or offered a buyout? Has the company you work for moved, been acquired, or closed its doors forever? And finally, do you have a 401k with a previous employer you'd like to move to safer territory? Then take advantage of this opportunity to move your 401k or lump sum pension to Tony Walker Financial. Let's meet in person to discuss your retirement options. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com to schedule your free, no-obligation appointment. Let us help you today.
Tired of the roller coaster ride of the stock market? Let Tony Walker show you how to smooth out the ride with your money. Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and let's get started.
Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement. Tony Walker here. I hope you're enjoying this particular topic because it is earth-shattering to think about how much debt, that's right, I call it debt, the government likes to call it taxes, is buried inside that tax-infested 401k, 403b, IRA, whatever it is that you've been pre-taxed all these years, didn't have to pay any taxes, and then there's that day of reckoning when you start pulling money out and the government has their fair share. Now, there's another issue that comes up. Sometimes many of you are wanting to roll over your 401k to Tony Walker Financial, whether you're still working or you've just retired, and all of a sudden we come across that there's a loan on that 401k. So in the studios to help us think through this a little bit is our own Craig Davis. And Craig, obviously you're in charge of all the 401k rollovers, so we'll walk people through this. So let's say I've met with people, we've looked at their assets, we've come up with a game plan, and they're ready to move forward, and they say, yep, I want to move that 401k over to Tony Walker Financial, whether it's in service, I want you to explain that, or they've already retired or getting ready to retire, and we notice there's a loan against that 401k plan. So walk us through those scenarios when you're doing a 401k rollover call. The person that's not retiring, but they're over 59 and a half, they're going to do an in-service rollover. How's the loan work then? And then the person that is retiring and wants the whole thing out of there with that loan.
Okay. So a person that does the in-service rollover, they're over age 59 and a half, like you mentioned. They're continuing, though, to work, continuing in the plan. They're going to make contributions. Maybe their employer is still matching as well. If there's a loan on that plan, most of the time, the custodian will just allow the loan to stay in place. So they can roll out the entire balance, generally speaking, roll out the entire balance, take the account down to zero if they want, and then they'll continue to make payments on the loan that they have in the plan. And they just move forward like they have been. All their investment choices, all those settings just remain the same. They just are starting over with a zero balance.
So let's summarize that, because somebody could be thinking that, right now as we record this show in March of 2025, the market's all over the place. We have people contacting us and they're going, you know what? I've heard you talk about this in-service thing. I'm over 59 and a half. I want to get this thing to safer territory, but I don't want to just close out the 401k. So you're saying they could keep contributing, get their match, and in most cases, the custodian will just leave the loan alone and they can just pay as they've been doing.
Right. So say there's a $20,000 loan on the plan. They don't require that $20,000 loan to be settled if they are continuing in the plan. They can just roll out the entire balance, and of course, plan rules are different, and the employers are different. So that's why we make eligibility calls sometimes, just to ask those questions. What's possible in this specific circumstance?
And that's a good point. If you're sitting there right now, even if you're not a client of Tony Walker Financial, I'd be happy to meet with you or talk to you. Those eligibility calls are free, and boy, they can save people a lot of heartache and money too, because you can find out a lot if you know what questions to ask those big custodians. Second scenario, let's walk through this. Somebody comes in, we've gone through the planning process, they're excited about the worry-free retirement, and they say, just roll that whole thing over. I'm ready to move that entire 401k over to your custodians that you all manage at Tony Walker Financial, and they got a loan. How does that work?
The debt, the way I've always understood it, it's a debt to yourself. So you've borrowed against your own money. So when you...
Through the 401k.
Through the 401k, yep. You borrowed your own money that you had previously saved. And so when you roll over, you don't have to actually pay those funds back. They will just issue a 1099. It does count as taxable income for that year. It will count as a taxable distribution. But you roll out, they subtract the loan amount maybe from your available, like you have your balance and your available balance. That may be usually how they will say it, account balance and available balance. And then they'll roll over the portion that's there, count the other as just a distribution that comes to you in this calendar year, and they issue a 1099 for those funds.
And I think I'm going to do a whiteboard on this, because that even brings up the point. It gets a little confusing. But what you're saying is, let's say you got a $500,000 401k, $20,000 loan. It gets rolled over to us. In this case, the $20,000 is going to be taxed as income. Obviously, if you roll over the 401k to us, we put it in an IRA, no taxes on that until you distribute it, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Good stuff, Craig. Got to run here. I really appreciate your services. And folks, again, if you got a 401k out there and you want to talk about it, let us know. Just log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com, TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Click on that Let's Get Started, or call us anytime at 877-499-9255. We'll be right back.
The following clients were not compensated for their testimonials of Tony Walker Financial. Their experience may not reflect the experience of all clients and is not a guarantee of future results.
Want to know what savers were saying right before the stock market crash of 2008?
At our age, we just don't want to be on the roller coaster of the stock market anymore.
I'm not satisfied with my mutual funds at all.
Stop putting your money at risk when you don't have to. Learn how to safeguard more of your retirement savings by logging on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com or call 877-499-9255.
This is Caitlin Decker. I'm responsible for service requests. For those of you who currently own an annuity, if you're receiving your lifetime income benefit payments, or as Tony calls it, mailbox money, when you set those up and we say it will process on a certain date, that means that company will disperse it that day. It takes 24 to 48 hours to show on your bank account. For example, if we say that your payment will process on April 1st, the company will disperse your payment that day, but it'll probably be April 3rd or April 4th before that payment shows up in your bank account. Keep in mind, if these dates fall on weekends or holidays, it'll process the next business day. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me at Caitlin@TonyWalkerFinancial.com or call 877-499-9255.
Having worked in the retirement planning field for 40 years, I know it's not just about how much money you've saved for retirement, but making sure you one day don't run out of money. That's where mailbox money comes in.
Now Mailbox Money.
A reliable, lifelong income, much like the pension plans from the past. If you're interested in turning your 401k into mailbox money, let's talk. Just set up your free 10-minute phone call with myself at TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement, and our topic has been this idea that your 401k has a tax tumor, or what I like to call a debt. That's the money you still owe the government that has not yet been taxed. But what if you have a true debt? In other words, you've borrowed against your 401k. You've maybe met with us at Tony Walker Financial. You like our products, you like our process, you love the game plan, and you're like, okay, I want to roll over that 401k to you guys. What's going to happen with this debt? Well, let's say people aren't familiar with what happens. So in this case, if you were to roll that over, most people take the option of simply having the custodian waive the debt. In a sense, it's not really free here, but the debt is basically taken care of. And what happens is then that's going to be attributable as taxable income. Let me explain. So let's say you have a $500,000 401k you're going to roll over to us. And in the meantime, you have a $50,000 debt associated with that 401k plan. And you hear the fact that, oh, you mean I don't have to come up with out of pocket? I can just pay taxes on it? That's great. But you got to slow down a minute and think about this. If you're going into retirement, that will be applied to other income, which could affect your tax bracket. And you're going to see this in a minute. In other words, the more you make, the more the government's going to take. And this extra debt that you decided to pay off will be attributable as taxable income, which could throw you in a much higher bracket. So you have to be careful and just understand what the next steps would be. And that's why you need to work with somebody like us. So let's imagine this. You have $50,000 in debt. Maybe your spouse is still working and you're drawing Social Security. We'll just use rough numbers. Let's say that's another $25,000 a year. A portion of that's going to be taxable. Let's say you're going to start drawing a pension, $20,000 a year. That's going to be taxable. Maybe your spouse is still working. Your spouse is making, let's say, $60,000 a year. You see where we're going with this. I mean, this is going to add a lot to this. And then in the meantime, you, on the income plan, you wanted to take $2,000 a month. When we move the 401k over to an IRA, you want us to send you $2,000 a month, which is no problem. But again, that $24,000 a year is added to your taxable income. So if you were to add all this up, you are definitely going to be in a 22% bracket. Plus, you're going to have some state on there, depending on the state. We'll say just average 3%. It's different for Indiana and Kentucky, but we'll average it at 3%. All of a sudden, you've got 25% in taxes you're going to have to essentially come up with. You're not going to see that immediately. You're going to get a 1099 and turn that into whoever does your taxes. And then all of a sudden, they're probably going to call you and say, hey, by the way, you didn't withhold enough in taxes. You need to come up with about $12,500 in taxes. And you're like, well, why is that? Because this was attributable as income. There wasn't any taxes withheld when you rolled over your 401k, but that 1099 sparked the additional $50 having to go on your tax return. So you might be saying, well, what's the point, Tony? The point is, hopefully you are working with a retirement planning firm that specializes in tax planning. While we don't do your tax returns, I think we have a very valuable service here. It's absolutely free for our clients. And this is the kind of thing we're going to weigh in on. Make sure you don't make some grave mistakes with your money and blindly pay taxes that shouldn't be owed. So in this example, we would have gone through a detailed analysis of what we could try to do to mitigate some of those taxes and maybe things we could have done within this plan to lower that taxable income. So that's you right now, whether you're retired or retiring soon and you're worried about taxation of your 401k and realize the government's got a lien on this thing and you want to kind of reduce that lien over time. Let us see if we can help. We're full-time retirement planning specialists and we help savers worry less about money by trying our best to mitigate what I call the tax tumor. So to take advantage of talking to me by phone, we call it the free fiduciary phone call. All you got to do to talk to me is just log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. You're going to click on that Let's Get Started button. We will call you to arrange this phone call. Now, if the internet's not your thing, you can call us 24/7 at 877-499-9255 and just let them know that you want to set up a free phone call with Tony. We'll be right back. Who can you trust? It's one of the most important decisions you'll have to make. Question is, are you ready? Well, we're here to help at Tony Walker Financial. You know, we care more about you than we do your money, and we have over 3,500 happy clients and an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau to prove it. Rolling over a 401k, confused about Social Security, maybe you're afraid of running out of money. Learn how to use and enjoy and protect your hard-earned money. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and let's get started.
Hey, Tony, you got a minute?
Oh, yeah, Gina, what's going on?
I just keep getting all these dinner seminars in the mail. It's crazy these days. I mean, people are going crazy with these. These things aren't cheap to do.
Well, they have become more prevalent since the pandemic. I mean, what do you think it costs to put on one of these dinner seminars? I mean, by the time you send out all those mailers and then buy the steak dinners, you got any idea?
They're probably spending an easy $20,000. So, Tony, you know they're going to want something in return for that.
Exactly.
The individuals in this interview are uncompensated clients at the time of filming. Their opinions expressed were provided to Worry Free Productions for use as an advertisement by Tony Walker Financial. Please refer to Form CRS and Form ADV Part 2B Disclosure Brochure for information regarding the advisory services offered by Tony Walker Financial.
Our client spotlight today shines brightly on Mr. Michael Harper. And Mr. Harper, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure.
And, of course, you agreed to be on the show. Actually, as we're getting ready to find out, it wasn't to talk about your retirement.
So I believe me and my dad came and talked to you before his passing. Wanted to get everything under one umbrella. You know, he had things scattered. He got to that age of, where's my money? Hey, he was old school. He came more from the save it all, era. Not really the invested and make a lot of money, is really to secure what you have, and he did very well for himself. So he had kept saying, we need to go to Tony, but he had been in the hospital and things like that. So your staff was very, very helpful in organizing that and getting all that where we are today. The trouble we had after my dad passed with getting everything put in my mom's name and under my mom's possession, I couldn't have done by myself, and your staff was more than helpful. I'm very, very gracious for that, and that was what I would tell people. Once you get to that age, get everything, even in your own house, to where it's a smooth transition when a loved one does pass away. So,
well, it was certainly a pleasure to meet your father. I'm sorry he passed away so quickly, but we're honored that we were able to help, and now helping your mother, and we got everything organized. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Looking for an advisor you can trust? Schedule your free phone call with Tony at TonyWalkerFinancial.com or call 1-877-499-9255.
It is estimated that each day over 11,000 people will turn 65, which means a lot of advisors selling a lot of annuities. Don't get stuck in the wrong annuity. Get a second opinion from TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Looking to roll over your 401k? Then log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and learn just how easy it is to roll over and safeguard your 401k. Do it today. Welcome back to the Worry Free Retirement. Tony Walker here, and as we record this show in late March in the throes of the big NCAA tournament, I'm sure some of you all enjoying these basketball games, but it does remind me of this concept I came up with years ago called the 3 halves of life. And it certainly relates to basketball, but more importantly, it relates to how people save money, how people spend money, and then what these 3 halves of life that I created have to do with possibly taking a time out. Now, if you'll notice, if you watch a lot of these ball games, there's the first half, then they have halftime in the second half. Obviously, theoretically, they're not taking timeouts during halftime because they're in the locker room trying to re-strategize, which is kind of what we do with people at halftime when we're working on retirement planning. Halftime is generally the period of time where somebody is almost retiring or they just began retirement. That's the period of time when you try to rechange your strategy, start enjoying your money, start positioning the money more safely, and start using and enjoying the money while you still can. So we do take time outs, so to speak, in halftime when we're dealing with money. But then you come out of the locker room and you're in the second half, okay? Now we're getting into what we call the later years of life. And if you'll notice in basketball, it's the second half when more and more of those timeouts are called. In fact, they will almost drive you crazy with all of these timeouts during the second half, and there's a reason for that. Folks, they know as coaches the ball game is nearing an end. Those timeouts are used to try to re-strategize as best they can before the clock goes to zero and they lose the game. The same thing happens with your money. The problem is we don't live in a perfect world with money, and many of you are waiting way too long to strategize on what to do with taxes and when to spend money, how much to leave the kids when you die. And a lot of times I see people way into the second half of life trying to do planning, and it's not that it's too late, but it's very difficult to do planning if you wait too long. So where are we going with this? Well, what I worry about right now, again, as we record this show in late March of 2025, many of you are forgetting that you've got way too much money in the stock market, and if you are a saver, our theory is, why take all this risk when you don't have to? Now, while nobody can predict the market, and I'm not going to say the market's going to crash at any time, we do have a cool graphic, but basically I'm going to read to you some of these losses in the stock market, okay? If we go back between 1929 and 1932, that was the Great Depression. For 67 days, the market was down and lost, listen folks, 86%. So if you had $1 million back then, you would have lost over $860,000. Imagine you're retired now and think about these potential losses. Randomly, let's go to December of 68 through May of 1970. The market was down 35%. And you say, well, surely this doesn't keep happening. Folks, there's a laundry list of these downturns. Here's another one, 1976 to 78. It was down over 26%. I talk about this period of time a lot. This was during 9/11, but between 2000 and 2002, again, down 37%. The big whopper of them all, 2007 through 2009. Imagine this, folks. You just retired and you're anxious to take money out of that tax-infested 401k, and the market drops 53%. Well, basically, you're going to have to go back to work. And then people don't realize in 2020, a huge loss. For 150 days, the market was down, and you would have lost over 33% of your life savings had you been 100% in the stock market. So what's the point? Well, the point is, I would encourage you, whether you're at halftime or in the second half of life, can we just take a time out and slow down and talk about your situation, especially if you're in the market. If you're in the market, I would encourage you to look at other ways to maximize your returns, but at the same time, minimize your taxes. Folks, that's where you're going to make most of your money back. It's not trying to chase all these returns and putting your money at risk. It's going to start with first keeping your costs down, earning reasonable rates of return, and then having a game plan in place that you can monitor along with us. We are retirement planning specialists, not just when you retire, but long into retirement. I'll have to say this as we conclude this segment. That's probably the most frustrating thing I'm seeing right now. Doing this for so long, there are so many people getting into this retirement planning field, and I'm afraid a lot of them do not truly understand retirement planning. They don't have the experience we have. So what happens is I'm having more and more people come to me. Maybe they've been to a dinner seminar, attended one of these educational workshops at a university or library. They get loaded up on products, buy annuities. They don't even know what they're buying. And then they come to me in 3 or 4 years and they need help. The reason they need help is not necessarily that they bought bad products. The problem is they never had a game plan with which to understand how to properly use these products. So that might be you right now. You're sitting there and deep down you're wondering why you're still worried. You're wondering if you've got too much money in the stock market. You realize that making 1% at the bank isn't going to help you. Why don't we do this? Why don't we talk about your situation by phone? It only takes a few minutes. It's absolutely free. We call this the free 10-minute fiduciary phone call. And to take advantage of talking to me, Tony Walker, the owner of the company, all you got to do is log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Click on that little Let's Get Started button. That information is confidentially sent to our offices. Myself will call, or we'll arrange a call with you and I to talk about your situation. And if it warrants, if I think we can be of help to you, guess what? We're going to provide that free written game plan at no charge to share with you how we at Tony Walker Financial are so different from the rest of the financial world. So again, TonyWalkerFinancial.com, or if the internet's not your thing, call us anytime at 877-499-9255. Well, that's all the time we have today on the Worry-Free Retirement. You remember, between now and next week, if all else fails, you be worry-free and you make it a good one.